Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bill Heitzman. I'm the Hastings Campus President for Central Community College, and I'd like to welcome everyone here today and for our first presentation of our Sustainability Workshop Presentation Series, kicking it off for the 2013 and 14 year. A couple of things before I go. Well, they out there do, right?
Otherwise, we're just going to be,
They're not going to sit.
they're not going to.
It's great to have a couple of people here already. We got all sorts of folks out and about that are going to hear the presentation. And if you need a seat, there's some seats out front here, and I know there's plenty of people out and about that are going to be listening to the presentation today. Just a quick note, employees, if you have not registered today, the EMPD system is available for you to register, so you can go ahead and do that. We're glad that everyone is here and can join us today. This year, we're very excited to partner with Metropolitan Community College to promote and broadcast the series across our service areas. I understand the technical crew at Metropolitan Community College is watching today and to set up and get ready for our next presentation October 3rd. Metro Community College, we're very excited to have you partnering with us and to be leading with you in the extremely important issue of sustainability. I'd like to also welcome everyone here at the Hastings campus today for the RAM Roundup 2013, combining this event with it, and to all CCC viewers in Columbus, Grand Island, Lexington, Kearney, and Holdridge. So wherever you're at in Nebraska, welcome to today's beginning series. Central Community College is committed, and Metro Community College committed to fostering and leading our institutions and communities in best practices in sustainability. As a signatory of the American Colleges and University President's Climate Commitment, this series is one aspect of many of our new 3C sustainability initiatives. And now, before I introduce our speaker today, I have just a couple of announcements for you. Students, if you haven't already, you can go over and pick up a bingo card at the information table. And with that card, please go around to our vendors and different stations, including this one for sustainability, so that you can have that initialed and be eligible for a t-shirt and other prizes that we would be giving away. Also, I'd like to mention to you, there are containers around here staying with sustainability. We ask that you get rid of your aluminum cans, paper, and plastics in the appropriate recycling bins. With that, I'd like to introduce our first speaker in the series, Dr. Mitchell Thomashow. Dr. Thomashow is the director of the Second Nature Presidential Fellows Program, designed to assist the executive leadership of colleges and universities in promoting a comprehensive sustainability agenda on their campuses. From 2006 to 2011, Dr. Thomashow was the president of the Unity College in Maine when he integrated concepts of sustainability, participatory governance, and community service to all aspects of college life. From 1976 to 2006, Dr. Thomashow was the chair of the Environmental Studies program at Antioch University, New England, where he founded the Interdisciplinary Environmental Studies doctoral program. Dr. Thomashow currently serves on the board of Orion Magazine, and he is a founder member of the Council of Environmental Deans and Directors. He provides ongoing consultation to the $1 Billion Green Challenge program on financing sustainability. His current project, The 9 Elements of a Sustainable Campus, provides a framework for advancing sustainable living and teaching in a variety of campus environments. Would you please help me in welcoming Dr. Thomashow? And we are glad that you are here today and presenting. So again, Dr. Thomashow, thank you very much.
All right. Hey, you can hear me okay? Now, I know that there are people who are watching this at remote campuses, but I've only got the direct attention of 5 of you. So I need really great body language, nods, responses, even if you think but what I'm saying is completely off, right? But that will keep me juiced, and it'll keep me going, and so I can give full attention to the people who I can't see, because it's very strange to speak to, people that you can't see. But I guess people do that on radio all the time, don't they? So I'll just imagine this is like a radio show. It's my first ever radio show on sustainability. All right, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm doing 5 little mini talks. So you can sit and listen to one and then go and come back later, however you want to do it. You can listen to all 5, which I think would be really cool, but that's up to you. And let me tell you what I'm going to do. The first one is why sustainability matters. It seems like thank you for the nods. It seems like we ought to start with that. The second is building a healthy community, because ultimately that's the point of all of this. The third is green jobs, career, and your education, which is for all the folks out there who are thinking about green jobs, because ultimately, if we can't use college educations as a way to get really good jobs, well, what's the point? Fourth is why the environment matters. It might seem like you don't have to talk about that, but the fact is you really do. And the fifth is how sustainability leadership contributes to a thriving community. So those are the 5 things that I'm going to talk about. And before I start, let me tell you a little bit more about who I am and what I do, and I think why I'm here. I spent 30 years at Antioch, New England, from 1976 to 2006. I had a great life there. Kids grew up there, raised a family, house in the woods, started all these great programs, and someone came knocking on my door one day and said, "We think you'd be a really good college president." And I thought, no way, that's not for me. I mean, there's no way I want to do something like that. So I gave them the names of all these other people who I thought would be really good college presidents. And a few weeks later, they came to me again and said, "Everyone says it ought to be you." This was a small college in Maine called Unity College, a little environmental college that I'd barely even heard of at the time. So I told my wife about it, and I told her, that I was being recruited, and I told her, by the way, it'll triple our income. And she said, good idea. So she gave me a pretty hard kick in the butt, basically, and said, "Look, this is a great opportunity for you. The kids are out of the house. Now's the time to do something. You've always wanted to move a whole campus forward on sustainability. If you're the chief executive, let's see what you can really do." So I said, "All right, I'll give it a try." So I applied for the job, and when I applied for the job, I said, "I'm going to tell you all the things that I think we can do," because I had nothing to lose. If they didn't want me, I figured, who cares? Then I can go back home, But it turned out that they really were excited about these things. And so what I did at Unity is I took a whole college, and I really tried to turn it into a sustainability college. And I got to tell you that Unity is a college with very little cash resources. We were a tuition-driven campus, like many colleges and universities in the country are. There are 200 or so elite colleges and universities in America, private colleges, some state systems, that really money is not a big issue. They're always going to be there. Everyone else, it's a dogfight, and it really, really is. It's very hard. The business models don't work. Unity was one of those colleges. We were a very modest tuition, which $30,000 a year for a private college is modest, believe it or not. That included everything. We had lower middle and middle class students, very small endowment, low salaries. It was resource strapped. So I wanted to prove you don't need money to get sustainability done. You don't have to be a wealthy college. You can do it in remote rural Maine, where there's even less sunshine than well, you got a pretty good amount of sunshine in Nebraska, I'm sure. But rural Maine is cold, and it's cloudy, and if you could do it there, you could do it anywhere. So I did it there, and I was very excited about it, and I'll tell you a little bit about that story soon. But first, let's get to this word sustainability, which you hear all the time. You may even be sick of. I hope you're not. But what does that word even mean anyway? So one of the best things that I do, and this is a study tip for the students out there, is whenever I want to know about a word, I go to an etymological dictionary. An etymological dictionary tells you about the origins of a word. So where does the word sustainability come from? Well, it turns out it's a 13th century. It comes from the 13th century French. And the French word was soutenir. As Steve Martin, the comedian, would say, those French have a word for everything. And he's right. And in fact, soutenir comes from the French, and what it means is to hold up, to endure. And it's also related to the word sustenance. And sustenance essentially means earning a living, subsistence, and livelihood. So all sustainability means is how you earn a living over time in a way that endures in a community. That's the point. How do we keep this place going? But here's the trick. In order to keep any place going, you have to pay attention to the natural world. No place exists in pure isolation. And the point of sustainability is to make that link between your community and the natural world. That's my view. That's why I do it. That's why it matters to me. That's why I think sustainability ought to matter to you. It's about keeping things going. It's about legacy. It's about heritage. It's about this particular place in Nebraska and how you keep it going with what's here. So when we save energy or we grow more food locally, well, of course you grow lots of food, but how much local food do you grow? When we do all of these things, the point is to build community through it. And I know that that's what you're trying to establish here, Greg, at Central Community College, and is that you're building a college through this whole idea of sustainability. Now, the important concept is that the word is linked to environment. Does the ecosystem have the capacity to endure over time? Or are we taking too much out of it? You know, we talk a lot about debt. That's a big issue in Washington, and a lot of folks are rightfully very concerned about that. But we don't talk about debt in relationship to the natural world. But we should, because it's the same thing. If you keep on borrowing too much money or printing too much money, and you're in debt all the time, then for dozens and dozens of years, you're going to have to be paying that back. So we're all concerned about that. And people, you know, this is a national issue. Well, the environment's the exact same thing. You can't keep on taking things out of it if you're not going to pay attention to what you have to be given back. So that's another very important concept of sustainability, and it shows why economics and ecology are very closely related, and it shows how the whole notion of debt and what we take is very closely related, and it also shows why this is not a right-wing or left-wing issue. This is not about politics as normal. It's about how we think about what we take from nature and what we take from the economy. So there are a lot of ways we can think about sustainability. Lots of businesses now are thinking about sustainability. And the economy. Does our business have the capacity to endure over time? Any businessman or woman can tell you that if they're just focused on 2 or 3 or 4 years, but not 10 or 15 or 20, the long-term prospects aren't good. Really good business folks plan for the long term for any business. Organizations are the same way. You're thinking about 10, 15, 20 years down the road for Central Community College, even more than that. The interesting thing about most colleges and universities is in many places, in many towns, they're the only institutions that are over 100 years old, or in some cases 200 years old, or in the case of like Harvard and some of those places, 300 years old. Colleges and universities and community colleges are supposed to think about the future. They're just supposed to, because they're going to be here for a long time. So that's another reason why sustainability is really important on a college campus. And then you think about it in terms of your personal life. I can't tell you the number, and I'll talk about this later in the health and community part, the number of college campuses I visit and the number of people I run into who tell me how burned out they are. Sustainability people who work in sustainability, oh, I'm so burned out. And I'm thinking, that doesn't make any sense. You're trying to talk about holding up and enduring and being resilient. Something's wrong. Something's not fitting. So we talk about sustainability in our personal life as well. Are we living the kind of personal life that enables us to endure? Or are we just spending all our time working? Well, if you love your work, I guess that's a good thing. But it's all about balance. It's all about maintaining that balance over the long term. In music, I'm an amateur musician, and in music, there's something called a sustained chord. In fact, so much of rock and roll is based on these incredible sustained power chords. There are these chords that you just want to, that was kind of almost, that train whistle's kind of like a sustained chord too. It just hangs there. It's a great sound. It hangs there and it floats, and you don't want it, you just want it to stay in front of you. So sustainability that's what that is. It's about keeping your vitality, keeping your health, keeping the viability of your relationships, etc. Now, here's the tough part. I'm going to take a time check here, because this is all kind of new material, and wow, I've gone for 12 minutes already. These are all supposed to be little 15-minute things. So I don't know how we're going to handle that one. But here's what I want to say to you. Sustainability is also a response. It's not just, we're doing it not only because we want to build a healthy community, but it's also a response to what I call a planetary challenge. This is what, as I said when I was here a year ago, I'm not going to hit you over the head too hard with this one, but I want to say what the planetary challenge is. Because through all the talk about Syria, as important that is, and all the talk of contemporary politics, these to me are the really big issues. And here's what they are. There are 4 of them. I'm going to briefly go over them with you. The first is what's called the 6th mega extinction. The second is plunging declines in biodiversity. I'm going to explain all these terms to you. The third is, I don't call it climate change, I call it changing climatic and oceanic circulations, and I'll explain that. And the fourth is biogeochemical imbalances. I'm going to stick with this, explain these terms, because they're really important, and they're not easy. I still don't completely get them, so if you don't after I'm done, partly it's because I haven't explained them well, partly maybe I don't completely understand it myself. Anyway, there have been 6 mega extinctions. Scientists have pretty convincingly proven that there have been 5 mega extinctions during the history of life on Earth. That is times when 60 to 80% of all the species on the Earth have perished. The most recent one was caused by a meteor hitting the Earth in Mexico about 60 million years ago, and that set havoc, as you might imagine. In fact, that paved the way for humans to be on the planet and basically got rid of the dinosaurs. So there have been 5 of these. We're in the 6th right now. So whatever your view of the past is, whether you think the world is 5 billion years old or 5,000 years old, we are in the 6th mega extinction right now. Number 6. We know that we're losing species daily. Okay? This is a huge, 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 huge issue. And it's very hard to understand because we don't see it happening. Because we don't know enough. We don't observe the natural world enough to know that this is happening. But this is big issue number 1. The interesting thing about this one is it's basically caused by human beings. So we have responsibility as stewards. So whether you come from a position of Christian stewardship or scientific stewardship, it doesn't matter. This is an issue that must be addressed. Why? Because we have very good evidence that suggests that the most healthy environment, the most healthy ecosystem, the one that creates the most sustenance, the most food, the most nourishment for all species, including humans, is one that has lots of biodiversity. Biodiversity simply means lots of different species of plants and animals and microorganisms and everything that comprises this great creation. So right now we're seeing decline in biodiversity. That has to be reversed. Sustainability, again, is a response to these things. Third is these changing circulations. We have excellent evidence that suggests that there's more carbon in the atmosphere as a result of lots of burning fossil fuels, burning coal for all these years. We didn't know we were doing it. It's no one's fault. And as a result of that, we have very good evidence that suggests that, in fact, the Earth is changing in very interesting ways that are not predictable. We know that the oceans, for example, are getting more acidic. We know that the polar ice caps are melting. We know that all of these things are happening. No one can predict for sure what the result is going to be 10, 20, 30, 50, 100 years down the road, but we know that the planet is going to look very different 50 years from now than it does now. I work with a group in Boston right now called the Higher Ed Working Group of the Boston Green Ribbon Commission, which comes out of the mayor's office. And one of the big issues in Boston is how to plan for sea level rise, because there's a very high likelihood that in 50 years, downtown Boston will be underwater. So how do you plan for that before it's too late? New York has faced this with Sandy. No one can say that Sandy is a result of these changing circulations. No one knows that. But we do know that there's a likelihood of more storms, and there's a likelihood of sea level rise. So that's the third big issue. The changing, and I think of it as circulation. The Earth is one big circulation system. The oceans and the atmospheres, it's really magnificent, really very beautiful. And those are changing in ways that we really do not completely understand. Even the best climate scientists will say, we don't completely understand the change that's happening, but we know there's a lot of change. The fourth big one is the changing what are called biogeochemical cycles. Think of that word, biogeochemistry. Bio is biology. Chem is chemistry. Geo is for geology, biogeochemical. Everything is a cycle. Water is a cycle. Carbon is a cycle. Nitrogen, phosphorus, all of these things are cycles, and we know that these cycles are changing as well. The most direct impact that we know about, not only in terms of the carbon in the atmosphere, is that the oceans are getting more acidic, which is changing the life cycle of the oceans. Now, this is the great experiment that we're involved in. It's fascinating on some levels. It's worrisome on other levels. It needs to be planned for. It needs to be better understood. And the public needs to be as aware of this as they are as to whether or not we should militarily intervene in Syria. Because in the long run, as important as that is, this is even more important. So the purpose of education is to get people to think and talk about these questions, as controversial as they might be, with all opinions being voiced. But sustainability is a response to these challenges. Because whatever your position is, if we use less resources, or if we use resources more efficiently, or if we come up with great technologies that will help us use resources more efficiently, and if we have a better sense of how we're living our lives, we're going to win. It's going to be better for the community. So that's what sustainability really is about, in my view. A sustainable approach means the following things. Frugality. That is essentially living within our means. When I was president of Unity, I needed to show, I had an interesting board. I had a board of very conservative people who hated taxes and hated government, and people who were very progressive and wanted to regulate everything. And I needed to work with all of those folks and say, we got a way to move forward here. They all agreed that we need to live within our means. That was the common ground that we all found. Protecting future generations so that our children and our grandchildren aren't suffering from whatever may happen on the planet 20, 40, 60, 80 years down the road. Conserving natural resources and really creative problem solving. That's the whole point of all of this. So that concludes, there's more to do, of course, but of course I can go on. But that concludes the first little mini lecture, why sustainability matters. So now, if any of you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. I don't know how I answer questions from the folks out in TV land. Do we have any tweets or questions, Minetta?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to sit back here and enjoy the breeze while you see if there are any questions, or if there are any questions coming from the audience. And if not, I'm going to go to the next little mini lecture. Thank you so much for sitting in the sun and listening to me. I mean, it's hot out there, and it's great. Any questions? Okay. Yeah. Yes, good. Well, thanks to them, too. All right, no questions. All right, so there are 100 people in TV land, and there's you folks here. So we're going to go to session number 2 now. I'm going to do a little time check to make sure I keep these all within reasonable time. 3:55, okay. Second is called Building a Healthy Community. Now, I'm going to make this one personal. I always used to, when I was effectively a dean at Antioch in Keene, New Hampshire, every noon I would go out and play basketball at the Y. And it just became a habit of mine, because I knew that if I just ate lunch and stayed in my office, by 2 o'clock I'd want a nap, and it just wasn't going to work, So I just played hoops, and it was great. I got rejuvenated, and it was awesome. So then when I became president of Unity College, I figured, all right, well, how am I going to do it here? I'm president now. And I'm not going to play. I'm too old. I can't play basketball every day. I still play once a week, but I can't play every day. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a noontime bike ride, and I'm going to take as many senior staff as I possibly can with me, and any students who want to go. And it'll be like President Kennedy's old fitness program. I don't know if who here can remember that. When John F. Kennedy was president, he had a fitness program. He really did in the early 1960s. This vigorous young president, President John F. Kennedy's fitness program. So maybe I remembered that in some funny way, and I figured I'm going to do that too, because here are the 2 big issues on college campuses for us, in terms of money. Things you can't control. You can't control your energy costs, because every year there can be a spike, and it's really hard to control your health care costs. because every year, especially in Maine, which is at the end of the line, you're going to get some kind of health insurance price hike that you're going to have to pay for. So where am I going to get the money from? Either I'm going to cut this small college, either I'm going to cut staff, bad idea, or I'm going to raise tuition. What else am I going to do? I have no other choice. I can raise money, but usually that takes time, and it's not for direct operating expenses. So I figured this, okay, can we control those two costs? Well, we can control energy costs because we're going to go sustainable. So we're not going to have to worry about annual big increases in heating oil costs. This is 2006, 2007, 2008, because we're going to control this ourselves, and we did that. How are we going to control healthcare? Well, we can have a healthier campus. So our premiums go down. And if our premiums go down, that's going to be a direct cost benefit. If you want to cut the cost of college tuition in this country, I mean it, you've got to take care of the health issue because it's a huge burden for many of these institutions. I'm not saying how you do it. That's above my pay grade. But it really needs to be done. So I figured the least I can do is make this a healthier campus. So we started taking noontime bike rides, and it was great. It was fun. And then I started talking with student life people, said, how can we make this a healthier campus? We did everything imaginable. We built nutritional awareness. We did meditation. We'd bring meditation teachers in. We brought massage people in. We set up Frisbee golf courses, seasonal vaccinations. Well, you name it, we did it. Within 1 year of doing all this, the incident reports that I got as the president, incident reports are really bad things that happen on campus that you better know about, right? I didn't know that when I was back at Antioch and my wife gave me that kick in the butt, I didn't know that anything about incident reports. But it took me a week to find out, oh, such and such happened to the dorm. Oh, such and such happened. When we started really focusing on healthy campus and getting people outdoors all the time, my incident reports went like that. They really went way, way down. So I really began to promote the virtues of physical fitness, eating well, having good relationships, contributing to our community, and focusing on service. A lot of colleges are doing this now as well, but I think one of the best ways to build a healthy community, whatever kind of campus you are, whether you're a community college or a four-year college or a hospital or a business, is by focusing as much as you can on service to the community. Because every time if you look at social capital measures, if you look at longevity measures, if you look at people who live well into their 70s and 80s, there's a direct relationship between service, community service, service to the community, staying active, and longevity. You can look this stuff up. This is all the social capital data points this stuff out. So my feeling was that if our college is going to be responsible, remember, this little part of the talk is called Building a Healthy Community. We need to be a healthy community, and if we're going to be a healthy community, we need to teach our students the very best habits right here, right now. Not when they're graduated, but this is their home for 4 years. They're 18 to 22 years old. I want to start here. And if they see me playing hoops and they see me riding my bike, and so we started doing things like, we did all kinds of things. We started to grow food on campus, everywhere. And I wanted it front and center so all the parents could see it. The way I looked at it was every single person who visited our campus, whether it was a parent or whether it was a potential donor or whether it was a business man or woman who was coming into the community, they were a student. If they visited our campus, I don't care whether they're there for 1 hour or for 1 year or for 4 years, hopefully, not 6 or 8, they were a student on our campus. So I wanted our campus to provide a learning opportunity for them. So we built the first LEED Platinum President's Residence in the country. LEED is a certification that's given to so-called greenhouses. Platinum is the highest certification you could get. We built it at very low cost. It's still the only one. My wife and I lived in it. The new president lives there now. We started growing food everywhere on campus. Students planted wildflower gardens. It didn't cost me a lot of money to do these things. The food was cheap. That part was cheap. We started doing public art everywhere on campus because I figured, this place is a little bit, I don't know, it could use some help. And I don't have the money to come up with all these glitzy new buildings. Remember, colleges are competing with other colleges to get students. It's very competitive atmosphere. So why should a student choose our college? Then you want to give them the very best value you can, and you want to be as attractive as possible. And I couldn't compete with these other colleges that have these really amazing buildings because we didn't have that money. So I figured we're going to put public art everywhere. We're going to have everyone make this place so interesting and so exciting and so different that people are going to want to be here. And it worked. And it cost me nothing because I would run little conferences where I'd bring artists together with sustainability people and ask them, how can we change this campus and make it more interesting? This is all part of building a spirit, building a morale, building a community purpose that really made a difference. So here are some of the most important things about sustainability in relationship to community vitality. And then I want to talk a little bit about community vitality, and then we're going to be done with this little part of the session. To me, the deepest meaning of sustainability is essentially this. How do you live a good life? That's what it comes down to. To me, that should be the bottom line of a college education. How do you live a good life? Yes, we want our graduates to have good jobs. It's hard to imagine a good life without a good job. So that's part of it. But really, it should be education about how do we have a good life? So what do we mean by that? What is a good life? What constitutes a good life? What virtues are the foundation of one? And often that's a very controversial conversation, but it ought to be. It's the kind of conversation that ought to happen at colleges. My belief is this. There's a relationship between a good life and a good environment. That you've got to have both at the same time. That the future of individuals and the future of humanity is also about the future of nature and the future of the planet. That one's personal well-being is linked to the personal well-being of the planet. It's making that connection that begins to change how you think about things. Because typically, you wouldn't think that, well, turning the thermostat down is going to contribute to the planet. And it's not, unless millions of people do it. And it's part of a systematic discussion of all kinds of things that are necessary. What kind of a community has vitality? You can think, those of you who are listening, at the campuses, and those of you who are here, have you ever been in a community that's really vital? Is this community really vital? And if it is, why? What are the factors that make it vital? Here are some of the things that I think make a vital community. Sense of shared purpose. This place has a shared purpose. You want to do the best job you possibly can to get folks a good education so they could get out there and have meaningful lives and good work. That's a shared purpose. You're all working on that together, and that makes your community work. Even though you may have different views and different ideas, that's vital. The ability to plan, make decisions, and act together. An atmosphere of support, encouragement, and confidence so you can collaboratively pursue your common goals. When you're in a community that manifests these qualities, you feel a sense of vitality. You feel enthusiasm and dynamism, and you're in a healthy community. So to me, the most important key to a healthy community is that people have interesting, meaningful, and secure jobs, and that they have the sense that they're working together for something that's really important, that really matters. That is a key component of what we mean by sustainability also. That should not be left out, it's what I want to say to you. Now, there's another concept which is going to be a segue to mini lecture number 3, and I've used the word already, and I'll use it again and explain it. And that concept is social capital. Capital, when we think of capital, we typically think of money. Can we invest the capital resources in something? But there are a lot of other ways of thinking about capital. There's natural capital. Natural capital, if you look around this campus, there's unbelievable natural capital here. There's all the cornfields. There's all the open space. I can't imagine a wealthier place than Hastings campus of Central Community College in terms of natural capital. You've got the sun for energy. You've got the wind for energy. You could grow food here. So this is, there are a lot of, you may be one of the wealthiest campuses in America when it comes to natural capital. If you think about wealth, I'm challenging you to think about wealth a little bit differently. Every campus will say it has great intellectual capital. That is mind power, right? If they don't think they have intellectual capital, then they don't think very highly of themselves. But the concept I'm most interested in for now is social capital. And social capital is the wealth that we get from working together. That is the most, again, as I said before, lots of studies have been done. Communities, even states that have the most social capital, the most organizations where people work together, are the communities and states where people are happiest, where they have the most longevity, and where they're the healthiest. So what we want to do is we want to invest, to use the language of economics, in social capital, and that will be the subject of my third mini lecture, which will come up shortly. So, are there any questions thus far? I know it's hard to ask questions in an environment like this, but you know, I got to ask. And are there any questions coming from the folks who are sitting at the campuses? Are they? Excellent. These are all these alternative information systems that go around that you didn't even know about. So if you don't know about, what difference does it make? That's the way I look at it. It's when I was president, people would say, oh, there's some morale issues over there. Well, have them come and tell me about it. I'm a pretty open guy. I never believe what other people say about, you know, you always, what people say to you directly, it was what matters most. I also used to say, if you're having morale issues I had a wonderful senior team. I had great people, all very welcoming, very warm. And if you guys are having morale issues with us, then maybe it's not our problem. I don't know. Well, I was kind of a fun president, honestly. I mean, how many presidents play hoops with the kids and ride around on their bikes and, you know, teach classes in their house? So that was the best part of the job. All right. No questions. Killed enough time. Radio program number 3, TV program number 3, green jobs, career, and your education. Okay. So, first of all, what makes a job good? What's a good job? You can all think about this in your head. Salary helps a lot. Let's face it. Helps a lot. Once you reach a certain point, it doesn't matter, though. Benefits, huge. If you got to pay your own health, I'm doing that now because I'm independent. Benefits, huge. Co-workers, big. You could have good salary and good benefits, but if your co-workers are a pain in the neck, you're not going to be happy, right? The kind of work you do, pretty important. Pretty important when you think about it. If you're really engaged in the work, you really like what you're doing, whether the work syncs with your interests and goals. Does it really fit who you are and what you think you should be doing? And here's a real important one. Whether you feel needed and respected. If you don't feel needed or respected, I don't care how much money you're making, you're going to be really unhappy. So here are the things that I think make for a good job. You need all these things in some ratio or proportion. You need reasonably good salary, reasonably good benefits, co-workers, good work, kind of work you do needs to be good, whether the work syncs with your interests and career goals, and whether you feel needed and respected. Everyone, I think, needs to feel needed and respected. All right, so that's a good job. Now, what's a green job? Because really what we're going for here is, what's a good green job? And then how do you get one? So, there's actually a website called I Am Empowered. Believe it or not, there's the I Am Empowered website. You can go there, and it says, green jobs are simply jobs that help to improve the environment and lessen the destructive impact that we have on the planet. Fair enough? Okay. The UN Environment Program, believe it or not, has a definition of green jobs. It actually has a definition of green-collar jobs, as opposed to blue-collar jobs. A green-collar is work in agricultural, manufacturing, research and development, administrative and service activities that contribute substantially to preserving or restoring environmental quality. So the fact is, a green job is simply, there's no mystery, there's no mystique. It's simply any job that contributes to improving the environment. Okay, so there are lots of green jobs, for example, in the construction industry, and a lot of the work that's happening right here at Hastings is preparing students for that kind of work. saving energy, using renewable energy, recycling. These are all areas where you can get jobs, where the job markets are growing, where the work is good. But using better materials, more efficient materials, conserving resources, building long-lasting structures. I mean, how about houses that last for 400 years? Imagine that. These shopping malls that get built, are they going to be there in 20 years, 30 years? No. These hotels, they go up. In 5 years, they're old. It's incredible. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. So a green job would be a job that builds a building that's going to last for 100, 200, 300, 400 years. That's what we used to build buildings. Why can't we build them like that now? Designing comfortable homes that reflect the place and the community. You don't need a big house. All you need is a house that's really comfortable and that really fits in with the natural environment. So those are all ways the construction industry can do a green job. So it doesn't have to be a green construction firm. It just has to be a firm that pays attention to all these things. Green jobs can also be so-called white-collar jobs. Although, you know, white, blue-collar, all that to me is kind of silly. I don't know why I'm even using those, because we know about them, because you know, white and blue-collar can be easily intermixed and interchanged. But here's some interesting careers as well. Engineering. These are all, by the way, professions where there's a lot of growth going on right now, where there are a lot of folks who want someone who has so-called green skills or sustainability skills. Engineering, architecture, energy systems, teaching, planning, fundraising, starting a business. There's been an incredible growth of so-called green MBA programs, Masters of Business Administration. There have been at least 50 new green MBA programs that have sprouted up in the last 5 years in this country. And sustainability managers. And sustainability managers are needed by colleges. Mineta is a sustainability manager. There are hundreds of Minetas now at colleges and universities around the country. I mean, could you imagine hundreds of Minetas? Like a clone or something like that? It's a little scary, Mineta. I don't know about that. But there are hundreds of people who have jobs like hers. And there are hundreds of people who have jobs like hers in small businesses, in cities, and in Fortune 500 companies. There's a wonderful green newsletter that you should get called Green Biz, Green B-I-Z. Comes out daily, it's free, and it goes over all the things that are happening in business, Fortune 500 businesses in particular, but all businesses around the country that are trying to be more green. And they're just doing amazing things. Absolutely amazing things are happening in the business world and the business community. So the green job opportunities are huge. And I can tell you that the role of community colleges is really important. And there's been great leadership now among many of Greg Smith's colleagues and peers, other community college presidents and chancellors who've really been moving this forward. And Greg is a tremendous ally of our work and has been extremely helpful. And you should know that. The point of the community colleges is that you can move people directly into the workforce. You can do it in 2 years. It's not, as opposed to the 4-year system or the 6-year system or the 8-year system. The quickest way to get people into the workforce is through the community colleges. You all know that. And I want to reiterate how important that is. It's also retraining for mid-career transitions, people who are laid off, people who suddenly find themselves someplace in their life where, oh my God, what happened? The quickest way back in is through a green training program. Well, it could be any training program, but a green training program because the demand is out there. And if you're moving on to a 4-year college, it's terrific preparation. Having so-called green skills, here are some green skills. You're not going to have all of them, but here are some green skills. Understanding energy, understanding materials, understanding waste streams, construction, planning, networking, education, how to conserve resources and money. These are amazing employment assets. If you're interviewing for a job and you have any of these, and you understand sustainability a little bit, and you understand how to save a business or a community, or any kind of organization money, then you're going to have an edge. I just know this is true by watching folks who get jobs, and I've been spending my whole life watching people and helping them get jobs. Many businesses are moving in this direction, so that those of you who are here, those of you who are listening on TV, anything that you can do to improve your portfolio through some of these skills is going to help you get a job. In the years to come, in my opinion, and right now, every employer will need workers who understand how to save money through the common sense use of resources, because that's bottom line, and who can make this connection to the whole community and who can improve the quality of community life in this process. And I can tell you that from many years of working in this field, people who have these skills get and keep meaningful work. So, green jobs, good jobs, community college preparation, it all fits, and it's all happening here right now. And that's the end of mini lecture number 3. I'll do a little pause. I think I'm doing pretty good for the timing now. I'm getting it down, right? I'm not even look at my iPhone clock, and we'll just sit here. I don't have a watch because you don't need a watch anymore in life, although they have these new Batman watches that they're coming out with. I don't want one of those. That's scary stuff, man. You just kind of poke on the watch and call your wife, you know. I don't know. Maybe it'll probably be so cool that I'll have to have one, man, you know. There you go. All right. I'm just assuming that there are no questions. That's all right. Lectures are not good ways, in my opinion, to generate questions. The best way to generate a question, if I was doing a workshop with you, we get in a circle, we get you doing some things, we get you doing some projects, working together on a common goal. That's when the questions come. You know, otherwise, here you're just sitting here, hopefully being at least mildly entertained. All right? All right. Number 4, why the environment matters. Well, I got into that a little bit before, but I'm going to try to bring it home a little bit now. I had the big concepts out there. Remember those big concepts: extinction, 6 extinction, mega extinction, climatic and oceanic circulatory changes, biogeochemical cycles, plunging to biodiversity. We live in a time of rapid environmental change. We do. It's unprecedented. Things are happening so fast, we can't even keep up. I mean, it's not only true of environmental change, it's true of the world. You know, I mean, just 1 year from now, who the heck knows what's going to happen? It's just amazing, really. You think about your parents and their lives and your grandparents and their lives. I mean, I talked about this before. My grandparents, they came from the shtetl. That's the Jewish ghetto in Russia. You know, in the early 1900s, 1890s, my grandparents. And here I am. I just, it's amazing. It's amazing how lives have changed. And, you know, my father, my parents were Depression parents. They went through the Great Depression, World War II, and all of that. And I was born in 1950, you know, and these kids now born in 80 and 90. Everyone grows into a completely different world with different expectations. And no matter how much we want to bring it back to some time that we think, it's all changing. And we have to learn how to adapt to the change, because when you can adapt to the change, you can really mold it for yourself and your life. And that's another important part of education, in my view, is how do we help ourselves and our students understand the best way to change with the times so we could live our values in those times. Big question. Don't expect any answers now, but we're living in a time of change. And a lot of these changes have very long-term consequences. And the thing you got to understand about a lot of the environmental changes, environment's changing all the time. It always has. I mean, you just don't always see it, right? Because did the ice come down this far? I don't know. Close. But, you know, if you go to where I am in New Hampshire, you go back 12,000 years, it's covered by ice. That's, you know, so it's always changing. If you follow migratory patterns, the birds are just, I mean, you've got it right here. You've got the sandhill cranes, right? I mean, that's one of the great miracles of life on Earth, is you've got these amazing cranes that have these phenomenal migratory pathways, and they happen to spend a lot of their time here. So they're always moving. Everything's moving all the time. Seeds are moving. Insects are moving. Dragonflies, monarch butterflies, they migrate to Mexico. Birds, it's all moving. What matters is the rate at which things move. So again, to get your mind around the climate thing again, it's the rate that matters. It's not whether things are changing, it's how quickly they're changing. That has to be measured and observed. Okay, here's why environment matters. Two great reasons, and I'm going to focus on it in a very personal way. Number one, it's about adaptation and survival. I'm not going to get into that, but it is. That to observe, you have to observe the environment to adapt and survive to it. It's just a basic truth of life. Two is, here's my position, and it's good because, again, I'm Jewish and I should be in synagogue today. It's Rosh Hashanah, it's the Jewish New Year. It's one of the holiest days of the Jewish New Year. So we're going to do I'm going to turn into a rabbi for a minute, which might be a little weird for some of you. But one of the great gifts of life is the gift of human perception. The fact that we can have this conversation, the fact that we have these eyes and ears, that we can sense as much as we can. That's one of the great gifts of being a human being on this planet. And we don't, myself included, we don't take advantage of it as much as we can because we're buried in other things and we're not observing. So I think it's our responsibility to observe nature more, because if we're just observing other human beings, it gets kind of old, really. The best way to understand what it means to be human and to understand the gift of being a human being is to observe the natural world, because then you're using your full faculties. And the more you observe, the more you realize how magnificent it is. So it's not enough just to take pleasure in the magnificence. The big question, and this is where the great Jewish philosopher Abraham Joshua Heschel had so much to teach me, is what do you do in response to that? What's your response to the gift of human perception? And the response is what you give back. So, keeping that in mind, here are 4 questions that I think we all need to ask ourselves. 4 questions is also kind of a Jewish thing, because on Passover we ask 4 questions. Here are 4 questions about environment that we all ought to be asking ourselves. I'm going to go over each of them. This one might take a little longer, but I think it's important. I'm going to ask the 4 questions, and I'm going to go into them. Number 1, what do we know about the place where we live? What do I know about the place where I live? Number 2, where do things come from? Number 3, what is my purpose actually number 3 is, how do I connect to the earth? And 4 is, what is my purpose as a human being? Big questions, good, big, juicy questions. And I want to look at them now, because it's to answer why the environment matters, we have to ask these questions. All right, what do I know about the place where I live? Now, many years ago, there was a great little quiz in a magazine called the Whole Earth Review, called the Where You At quiz. It had 20 basic questions about the place where you live. I'm going to run a few of them by you. You may not be able to answer them. What's the average annual rainfall? Name 5 wild edible plants. Name 5 migratory birds. What's the soil series you're standing on? When is the next full moon? When do the deer rut? What's the prevailing wind system? And so on and so forth. Okay? I went into a rural high school in New Hampshire one day when my kids were in school. It's fun to embarrass your kids by going to their classes. And I gave this quiz out. This is a rural high school in New Hampshire. And of the 30 students who took the quiz, it's about 15, 20 years ago, only 5 could even answer 5 questions. These are basic questions. And the 5 who can answer them are the kids who hunt. All right. So, I mean, that makes sense, right? If you lived here 100 years ago and you couldn't answer those questions and the other 15 or so, you wouldn't make it. We're the first people, really, in the history of the planet who could get by without understanding any of this stuff. This all gets back to sustainability. Because how do you think about the environment? How do you think about the ecosystem? How do you think about the planet if you don't know the first thing about the place where you live? I mean, it's just so basic, it's almost silly. So what are these things? Well, the topography. Yeah, I can see it's flat here, but I bet those of you who really explore this place know that it may be flat, but it's pretty mysterious too. There are probably all kinds of little water courses and all kinds of little shifts in emphasis here in Nebraska that are very subtle and very important and very interesting and make a big difference in this place and make up the beauty of this place. What about the winds and the weather? When I come out here, the first thing I see is, wow, this sky is amazing. I mean, I live in the hills of New Hampshire, and I'm claustrophobic. I love it there, but it's claustrophobic all the time. I got up this morning early, and it's harder to sleep late as you get older, and I took a walk even, I'm staying at the Fairfield Inn, and I took a walk, and even though it's just malls and stuff, the sky was just amazing to me. I mean, I don't see skies like that. It's just amazing. There's weather everywhere. It's just great. What about the human history of this place? Who lives here now? What are the different groups that live here? Who lived here before you lived here? Who lived here before them? What about the flora and fauna? What are the native plants? What are the native species? This stuff is so fundamental in my point of view. It needs to be taught in every elementary school. There's no values attached to it. It's not values education. It's basic education about the place where you live. It's fundamental to sustainability education. What do I know about the place where you live? Because unless you know this stuff, the bigger picture is not going to matter to you. You're not going to be able to understand these other things that I talked about, the changing circulations, extinctions, any of that, if you don't know something about this place where you live right now. Number two, where do things come from? I used to have a wonderful little activity I did where I'd hold up a marking pen, a magic marker, and I'd hold it up and I'd break my class into groups of 4s and 5s, and I'd give them 20 minutes, say, okay, I want you to tell me everything you can about this marking pen and draw a picture. Where does it come from? How is it made? How did it get to you? How did it get, and what's going to happen when you're done using it? Pretty basic questions. Of course, no one knew the answer. No one can tell me. I'm old enough to remember when the first magic marker actually appeared. It was in the early, because when you're a kid in the 50s, when I was a kid in the 50s, things you write with were kind of cool. Crayons. So Crayola crayons, there was a box of 48 crayons. Those of you who are old enough will remember this. Those of you who aren't won't care maybe. And then one day they came out with 64. And everyone wanted to know, well, what are the new colors? And then there was 128, but that was like for this truly unbelievably spoiled kids. I hope none of you had one of those. Who had 128 crayons? Not me. So there was 48 and 64. Okay, so the point is there were magic markers, and when they first came out, I remember that was really the reason why it was called a magic marker was because the guy who invented it thought it could write on anything. So it was hence a magic marker. But I thought magic marker, what a great teaching tool. Let's talk about this in my class, and no one knew. Well, we can do it with anything. We can take these shoes, we can take this footwear, your clothes. We just don't know. Now, why is this important? Because there's impacts every step along. We're so divorced from the production process that we can't possibly understand how it has an impact on the planet. So part of educating for sustainability, part of why the environment matters is to understand where these things come from. You all understand corn. You all understand beef because you live right in the middle of it. You understand the impact it has. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I don't know. I don't live here. But you understand it has a huge impact on this place. But someone from New York City, let's say, this is, of course, a ridiculous stereotype, may think corn comes from the grocery store. So where things come from matters. I came from New York City, and I never thought that, but that's all right. All right. So that's the second big question. First one is, what do I know about the place where I live? Number two is, where do things come from? Number three is, how do I connect to the earth? Now, this is just basic advice, I think. You can take it or not. It's up to you. But what do you do the first thing in the morning? Turn TV on? Turn on your, the internet on your iPad or computer? What do you check on your kids? What's the first thing you do in the morning? How often do you just go outside and look around? You don't. Because our lives are structured to not do that. And it's too bad. Because it's really a great thing to do. This is such a simple pleasure. There are so many simple pleasures. So where is the natural world? And you don't have to go to the Rocky Mountains. It's right here in Nebraska. When I was here last time, I really wanted to get out and see the prairie a little bit. And I'm glad that I did. And I'm reading a book about cranes now that they gave me when I was out there. I was reading it on the way here. The natural world is not only there, it's everywhere. It's in the crack in the concrete. It's in the dandelions that come up in the crack. It's in the spider web in the corner. It's the mold that grows on your food. All of that is part of the world, natural world. But it's paying attention to it that helps you ask the questions. And again, to me, this is where all the sustainability discussion ultimately comes from, is paying attention to these things. And finally, the fourth is, what is my purpose as a human being? Now, everyone answers this in their own way. Some of you may have, faith-based answers to this kind of question. Everyone has a different response to it. But it's a question we have to ask, and that the whole sustainability discussion has to ask as well. So when I think about it, I'm not going to get into that now, we don't have time. But if you act as if the environment matters, you take full responsibility for being a human being on this planet, and when you take that responsibility, then you're giving something back for your gift of human perception. You take responsibility for the place where you live, you consider the wider impact of your actions, you treat the landscape and your neighbors with respect and humility, you appreciate the energy and resources and food that provide your sustenance, you exhibit gratitude for what you have, you have respect for diversity, and you have respect for posterity. That's what's to come in the future, legacy, heritage, and ancestry. And I'm going to end with a wonderful quote from this philosopher, Abraham Joshua Heschel. And I think he's writing about the Bible when he says this, but you can apply it to anything. Faith is a seed planted in the depth of a lifetime. And I think that's the way we have to think about our environment as well. All right, I have finished mini lecture number 4. We got only one more.
We do have a question from Columbus, if you're prepared to
I
answer
am ready for a question.
Okay, the question, very good question for the presenter. How do we tie sustainability to state education standards and maintain the quality of our education?
Wow, that is really a great question. And it's a long answer, and I hope I can do it justice. But thank you for that great question. I think higher education is overregulated. And I'm very concerned about standards in general. I think that I had to spend, as a college president, our institution spent thousands of hours having to deal with various accrediting agencies. Now, I understand why that's necessary, but it's got to be streamlined, and it's got to be more efficient, and I think that something needs to be done in general about state education certification standards because it's gotten carried away. So I am very hesitant to put sustainability into those standards for that reason. I think it's another. Look, I'm not against regulation. There are a lot of places where I think regulation is really important, but I think higher ed is overregulated, and I'm very skeptical about standards in that regard. I think every institution has to figure that out for themselves, and I think the institutions, in my view, the institutions that figure out how to do it are the ones that are going to recruit, attract, and keep students. They're going to get the best students. They're going to have the most success in their communities, and I'd really like to keep it that way. I sound very conservative, but, so be it. Any other questions or thoughts? Are they? Well, what I just said is it will piss a lot of people off one way or the other. I mean, there are a lot of people saying, oh, we need a standard for sustainability and everything else, and some who think that, more standards are not, but again, I'm looking at it from a pure cost point of view. I want to keep college costs down. And I see the number of hours I've got faculty spending on assessment. And some of it's important, some of it's really necessary, but it's got to be streamlined. And I'm not sure, and this is going to sound terrible, but I'm not sure we're assessing students any better now than we were when I was in college in 1969. I'm just not sure that we are. And I guarantee you that thousands more hours are being spent on assessment right now. So, again, I'm not opposed to it. I think good assessment's really hard to do and really important to do. But, I mean, I'm very skeptical about the president's idea of rating these colleges. I really am. I think their intentions are good. They want to keep the cost of college down. I really believe their intentions are good, but I don't like where it might go. I think it's just going to favor the elites ultimately because they're the ones going to be able to pay for it. So anyhow, all right. So much for that. Once you get going on some of these things, you really can get going. So, all right. The last one is how sustainability leadership contributes to a thriving. Well, are there any more questions? Just lots of tweets? All right. All right. I want to talk a little bit about sustainability and a very important word. That word is innovation. Innovation is what makes a difference in our lives. Who are the innovators? The job of the leader is to find the innovators and to invest in them. I'll put it as simple as that. The job of the leader is to find the innovators and invest in them. I knew I was doing my job as a college president if I could find the most innovative staff and faculty and get them the resources to get their job done. That was my job. Might not have been the innovator myself, but I wanted to find them and empower them. Sustainability initiatives involve innovation. Innovative ways of thinking about food, water, energy, and materials. So we want to find who the people are who have the really good ideas. Ideas move. They move just like pollen, which is an appropriate metaphor. Ideas move through a campus or a community when people see how the idea will improve their life. It's as simple as that. How will this idea make my life better? A leader will show them how. A leader will show that this idea will make your life better, and here's how. It could be a tangible demonstration. It could be a convincing argument. It could be lots of different things. For an idea to take hold, lots of people have to agree that it's going to make a difference in their lives, and then someone has to be the advocate for their idea. So the leader asks, who will be the innovator? Who will take chances? Who will demonstrate how and why this innovation will improve everyday life? Now, innovations are more likely to spread through a community when they have investors, like any business. Seed money of one kind or another. People who are willing, investment's not only money. Investment is time and effort as well as money. So the leader has to find the investors for the innovators, and the leader brings investors together with the innovators. When an innovation is successful, someone has to spread the news. That's what the leader does. Leaders take responsibility for communicating about innovations. So I've seen so many great ideas that no one knows about because no one chooses to talk about them. And I've seen lots of really bad ideas that look really good because people talk about them too much. So you got to find a good idea and a good communicator, and it's all going to work out a lot better. But a good leader also does this, and I think this is important. A good leader will also say, this idea may have some shortcomings to it. This innovation might have some shortcomings to it. When we did Sustainability at Unity, I said, we're trying things out. Some things are going to work and some things aren't going to work, but we're not going to know unless we try. So there's got to be a spirit of experimentation and a bit of a spirit of risk attached to it. But a good leader builds transparent communication, and through that, open dialogue, you gain confidence and trust so you can admit your mistakes and then move on. And I think that's what happens. So sustainability leaders, that's leadership in general. Now sustainability leaders have a whole nother burden, if you will, or special privilege, depending on how you want to look at it. And that is because the sustainability advocate's always saying you ought to live your life this way, or think about living your life this way if you want to give it a soft approach. They need to live that way. They need to live that way themselves. Because otherwise the hypocrisy just comes right out. Now we tried to do that at Unity, so we built a LEED Platinum house, we tried to eat well, we tried to do all that stuff. But still, my life is filled with contradictions because I'd be flying all over the place. We started a journal actually at Unity College called Hawk and Hansel, the Journal of Creative Sustainability, a creative writing journal. And I did it for lots of reasons. I wanted to get the Unity word out there, but the idea was to write a journal about sustainability that dealt with all the contradictions and hypocrisies. Because I wanted them out on the table. I didn't want it to seem pure. I wanted it to seem real. So I think a good leader is willing to take responsibility for that kind of experiment. Here are some of the emphases, I think, of the Sustainability Leadership Challenge. This emphasis on human flourishing in the biosphere, promoting the good life while keeping the environment in mind, how to balance the challenging demands of personal and professional life, how to place aspiration and accomplishment in a deeper perspective. So many times people are just so caught up in their aspirations and their accomplishments that they don't see the bigger picture, and they need to. It's important to think about the imbalance between the promise of a good life and its realization. Those things are tough challenges. And I think finally demonstrating the relationship between sustainability and character and one's life practice. So I actually wrote an essay about that. It's in my book. So I have a book coming out, by the way, in the spring called The 9 Elements of a Sustainable Campus. Actually, it's out in January. It was the subject of the talk I did when I was here a year ago in October. The book will be out, and some of the material, not all of it, but some of this material is new to this group. Some of the material will be in that book if you'd like to read more. But here are some leadership guidelines. And I'm just going to go through them quickly because we've been sitting here. You guys have been sitting here for a long time. And I really appreciate that. So I'm just going to go over these pretty quickly. But here are some of the leadership challenges that I see. Number one, accept that you're a role model. Every person who advocates for sustainability is a role model. For that matter, any leader is a role model. If you're a leader, you're putting yourself out there. If you're putting yourself out there, you're subject to public scrutiny. If you're subject to public scrutiny, then you have to live within your values. A good leader provides a sense of proportion and scale. And I know you know, I know you probably deal with this all the time. The number of people who come into my office and just be so wound up about something. And my job was, well, what are you wound up about? Why are you worried about that? Let me worry about that. You don't need to worry about that. You worry about this. But just helping people understand that, the sun's going to shine tomorrow, and that this will pass, and let's get everything in the right scale here. And that, I think a good leader does that, and it does that all the time. Time management is huge for leadership. The number of hours I would spend with senior staff just helping them understand how to spend the hours of their day. Good leaders do that. Emphasizing clarity and accountability. How to be clear in your messaging, and how to make sure your entire institution, your campuses, and where is the accountability here? Accountability doesn't come through standards necessarily or certifications. It comes through common agreements about a particular job that you want to get done. And then you come up with a new suite of accountability measures. It moves along according to where your institution is. Good leaders build networks. Good leaders talk to other good leaders. This is a really important one for me. Good leaders emphasize politeness and respect. I can't tell you the number of problems that I think I solved by just getting people to be polite to one another. It's amazing how quickly things can escalate, and people get defensive, and they say silly things. And if you can just get rid of that, and get it polite, and get it respectful, not always. I had some crazy parents who came in, and I thought I could deal with them, but I couldn't. But most of the time, if you just deal with politeness and respect, and you listen well, you're going to get your job done. This is going to sound maybe a little artsy, but I think you need to create an improvisational flow of creative imagination. I think every good leader tries to set up as many places where imagination can flourish. What would happen if we did this? Or imagine if we did this. You're only going to be able to do, 10% of what you imagine, if that. But it's the imagination is the process that builds the support to get something done. And finally, the last one, there are some others, but I'm just going to end on this last one. And that is to celebrate your accomplishments. It's so important that people know about all the good things they've done. And if you just hung up on all the things you haven't done, you're just not going to. It's the old half full, half empty thing. The cup half full matters enormously. So you got to celebrate your accomplishments. So anyway, that's it. And those are my 5 little mini lectures. I know we covered a lot of ground, and thank you so much for being patient and sitting with me, those of you on TV and those of you who are here. it's amazing. I've actually been to Central Community College twice now in 1 year, and I'm really honored and delighted about that. So thank you so much. Any more questions? I'm happy to answer them. People want to come up to me afterwards, that's good too. And hey, have a great year. Yeah.
We do have some questions.
All right.
Or a question? Do we have more than one? Yeah. Okay. First one, advice for students interested in sustainability but not sure exactly where to focus in school.
Great question. I think that two ways you can go about doing that. One way is to just, this is going to sound really basic and a little silly, but wake up in the morning and make a list of the things that you really like to do. And then, I'm not done yet. And then you look at that list and say, okay, can any of these things be translated to some of the programs at my school? And if they can, that's really great. Okay. If you don't like that approach, here's another one. Second approach is to go through the catalog or the course list and find, the courses that look most appealing to you. Because ultimately, you're going to learn best what you're most interested in. And just follow that for your first semester. Follow that for a while. Here's the third one. Find the best teachers you can. Because the best teachers will make a huge, huge difference in your life. I don't even care what the subject is. Find the best teachers. And finally, here's my bit of advice. It doesn't matter what you do. If you work hard at it and you put all of your effort into it, something really good will come out of it.
As a student, how do I lead in sustainability?
Great question. I think you lead, first of all, by finding other students who are interested. You have the power to communicate with other students through texting, through all of your social networks. Find out who's interested, get them together, have a meeting, ask what you could do. Work with your senior leaders. First of all, there's probably some kind of student organization. Work with your student organization. And then, at some point, when you've got some really good ideas, talk to the presidents. I used to love it when students came to me and said, this is what we'd like to do. We couldn't do everything they wanted, but it meant that the campus was alive with interesting ideas and activities. So start with your friends who care about this, branch out to other student organizations, and then go right to your leadership and get as many great ideas as you can.
And the last question, teaching sustainability teaches values. Is that our job in education?
Well, as I tried to point out, I think there are a lot of things I said about sustainability that aren't about, yes, they're about values, but they're so broad-based that they're not really controversial. They're just not. I think, living within your means and taking care of the planet, taking care of your community, I just don't see where that's controversial. So I think it's okay to teach about values in a class as long as you're willing to entertain lots of different points of view. And it's okay to say what your values are as long as you respect others. But I don't buy the criticism that sustainability is about teaching values. Yes, there's some of that in any good teaching, but it's not unique to sustainability by any means.
We do have one last question that came in from Metro Community College. What is one simple change someone can make to enhance sustainability and well-being?
Well, I made a lot of comments today about all of those things, and I would say you need to pick the best one for yourself. And for you, it might be, and this seems really far-fetched, but it might mean waking up every morning and taking a 10-minute walk and observing everything you can about the natural world. And for someone else, it might be recycling or changing all the light bulbs in their house. And for someone else, it might be taking some kind of course. You have to answer that question for yourself, but you have to find in your own individual life what is the most important thing that you think you can do. Good questions.
I believe that was our final question. We'll just
All
wrap
right.
it up.
Good.
Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
Thomashow.
Yeah.
Second time being here. I will tell you, let's all give him a hand because I think he did a great job. I can tell you, I walked around a little bit to see how the message was carrying out and about, In some areas we had some dead spots, but overall, I think people were genuinely enjoying your message and what you were saying.
Good, thank you.
And I think with some of the questions being where do we play in the role, I think at least since I've been here last year and since we've taken on the initiative, the one thing that is happening is there's a lot more dialogue, and I think the conversation and people are talking about it, and that's one of the things that you want to have started.
Absolutely.
So I think from that, I think the series is really off to a good start, and I want to thank Dr. Thomashow one more time. Before I close this, though, I want to thank everybody that's out in the centers, Metro Community College, for the folks that are joining us there. And because this is also our Ram Roundup Day, I want to make sure that I thank all of our vendors, all the people that are here, the students that were active involved, our custodial maintenance crew and staff at the campus that really spent a lot of time all week taking care of this and getting this set up. I always take credit myself, though, for the weather, and I couldn't ask for a nicer day, right? That's right. No. Yeah, we turned out a great day, so thank you all again. And food is being served over here, so make sure that you take part in the picnic. Thank you very much.